In this lesson, we're going to talk about understanding slope, and we're going to talk about slope in several different forms. The first one we want to talk about is finding slope from a graph. And the easiest way to look at slope when using a graph is to think of the idea of rise over run. You want to find two good ordered pairs. So right here is one, that y-intercept is a great one. And then we have another good point right here. And what you want to do is you want to look at the rise. For this one, it rises 2, and it runs 1, 2, 3. You can tell this line has a positive slope because it's rising as you read it from left to right. So it's a positive 2/3 for the slope of this line. Then we want to talk about finding the slope using two data points. This is when we talked about finding the change in y over the change in x. So when we look at these two ordered pairs, when we go from 5 to 7, that's a positive 2 change. When we go from 2 to -1, that's a -3 change. So our slope, our change in y is positive 2, our change in x is -3, so our slope is a -2/3. For that slope, you can also do the formula y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, which is the formula you learned last year. It works the same way. We can also find slope from a table. We still want to use the idea of the change in y over the change in x. So when we look at this table, we first want to look at what is the change in y. Well, from 12 to 15, that's a positive 3 change. 15 to 18 is a positive 3, and 18 to 21 is also a positive 3. So our change in y is positive 3. And then we want to look at our change in x. It appears that each time it's going up by 1, so we have a positive 1. So our slope for that table is 3 over 1, or just 3. We can do it with a table that's running vertically also. Here, our change in y is -4, and we notice it's the same for the next one. And our change in x is a positive 2. So our slope is our change in y, -4, over our change in x, positive 2, which is a slope of -2, or you could say -2 over 1. Then we wanted to talk about slope from a word problem. How do you find slope from a word problem? You want to first look for the rate. Often in word problems, the rate is given to you. So when we read this, we say, Chloe's doing a walkathon to raise money for the American Heart Association. Her parents have pledged $100, and her Aunt Jill pledged $2 per mile walked. $2 per mile walked is a rate, and that's going to be our slope. So for this one, I'm going to use m for the slope. It has a slope of 2. And in class, we talked about the whole equation. The money earned is going to be equal to 2 times, let's use E for the money earned. 2 times the number of miles walked, plus the $100 that she got from her parents. Now, the next word problem says Sydney and Avery both belong to the Cooper Wellness Center. Sydney has been a member for 7 months and has paid $715, and Avery's been a member for only 3 months and has paid $375. For this one, a rate isn't given to us, so we need to find the rate. We see that when she was a member for 7 months, she paid $715. Remember, time is your independent variable, so months needs to go first. And then for 3 months, it costs $375. Now you notice we have two ordered pairs again, so we can find the change in y over the change in x. Our price goes from $715 down to $375, so that's a -$340 change. And the months goes from 7 down to 3, so that's a -4 change. Remember that this is money and this is months. So if we simplify that, we get 85, so it's $85 per month, and that's your rate. Then we talked about how to go ahead and also find the y-intercept, the starting point. And you can use one of these ordered pairs, the fact that she made $375, or sorry, that she paid $375, but it was just $85 a month. So we did 3 times 85 to figure out how much she'd paid in monthly fees, and we subtracted that from $375. I believe we got $120 was the joining fee for the gym. So what is slope? Slope is the rate of change. It is the rate for the problem. It's often dollars per month, or dollars per year, or dollars per hour. It could be miles per hour. We can see rates in lots of different ways. But the slope is how quickly the graph is changing. Is it a steep line? Is it a flatter line? Is it positive? Is it negative? But the main thing with slope is that it is the rate of change. It is the change in y over the change in x. What does the slope tell me about a graph? It tells us if it's increasing or if it's decreasing. And what does it tell us about the problem? It tells us the rate of change. In class, we did these walking graphs, and we talked about here you started some ways away, and you walked at a steady pace away from the motion sensor. In this graph, you started away from the motion sensor, you walked towards it, and then you walked away from it. Okay? In this one here, we started away and we walked towards the sensor. Then we looked at some where here you were walking away from the sensor, and then you stood still for a period of time, and then you quickly walked back towards the graph. Remember, the steeper the line, the faster the walking. The less steep the line, the slower the pace.